headline-making interview with the Indian High Commissioner of Canada, Dinesh Patnaik, our group news editor and boss of this channel, of course, Yudhvir Jaswal. He did a very candid interview with the High Commissioner and brought out some of the revealing and obviously hard-hitting facts. The High Commissioner was very candid and very open about resetting the relationships between India and Canada. And also, both of them found one common passion, and that was cricket. They also talked about cricket, Indian women team winning the World Cup, and obviously that was one common meeting ground. We had some very difficult questions for him, but he handled it very, very gracefully and charmfully. I would also ask Yudhvirji about his personality and persona, because High Commissioners, they go a long way in deciding the relationships between the two countries. What we've seen in 2023, September of 2023, that was the lowest ebb between Canada and India. Diplomatically, you can't have anything lower than that. When Canadian Prime Minister in Parliament said that Indian government was responsible for killing of a Canadian citizen, that was the turning point, and it never came back till March of this year, when Carney, the newly elected Prime Minister, he tried to mend relationships with India, and as a result, now in last about 6 months, Indian Foreign Minister and Canadian Foreign Minister, they've met 3 times, and this is the start of a new beginning, from a point where they expelled the diplomats and to a point where they are talking very cozy, and they're trying to reset. And Indian Foreign Minister was here in Niagara Falls, and as you have it, Canadian Trade Minister Maninder Sidhu was in India talking more about deepening and strengthening the trade relationship between the two countries. Two countries have been very, history would say it, history would tell you that very cozy relationship and very friendly relationship between the two countries. India was exporting the largest number of foreign students to Canada, and obviously Canada was the top destination. If you wanted to migrate out of Canada, Canada was the first choice for many. Many thought that perhaps it's very homely out here in Canada, and many of us who came here many years back, obviously we want and wish a very healthy and strong relationship between the two countries. India, population-wise, is the largest democracy, and Canada, land-wise, is the largest democracy in the world. So obviously, few things in common. India has a very liberal thought process, so has Canada. And I won't like to waste your time. I would like to go back and talk more about that interview. I have with me Yudhvirji. Yudhvirji, welcome, and what a news, exciting day tonight. And of course, it's going to be very exciting. First, we'll talk about this interview, and then the Bihar elections and Taran by-election.
Yeah, of course. Vikramji, thank you so much for inviting me on your show today. You're right. In today's show, we will be talking about very important issues regarding the foreign policy. We'll start with this one, Canada-India relationship. If time permits, we'll also talk about Canada-US, because we just had the G7 foreign ministers meeting. There were 15 foreign ministers here in Canada. And we'll talk about that. And we'll also talk about Canada-US relationship, India-US relationship. There's so much happening at the global stage. So there's lots to talk on Ymedia foreign policy. And as you just mentioned, there's lots to talk about elections in India, Bihar elections. There's a by-election in Punjab, Taran. It's a very significant one.
Absolutely.
And maybe if we get some time, we'll touch a little bit on sports as well. Please.
Before we go and talk about the hard headlines of that interview, he also talked about Women World Cup. How did that come up? And obviously, you're a champion of sport reporting. So how did you like it?
Yeah, I think I initiated the discussion because this is a new India. That's what we're talking about. Because when I left India about 25 years ago, it was a very different India, but still a very aspirational one. And I think the aspirational curve has been on the rise. Indian youth, they do not want to play second fiddle to anyone.
Absolutely.
I clearly remember, India was taken as a very timid team. Australia, South Africa, England, even West Indies in their own era, they were very dominant. The rise of India that we saw in 80s, 90s, and now you see it has culminated to the women cricket team winning the World Cup.
No one ever thought about it.
No one ever thought about it. And you know what? If you would have asked me before the Women Cricket World Cup, I wouldn't have given many chances for the Indian women cricket team to win that. So I brought this during the discussion with the High Commissioner himself. So High Commissioner Mr. Dinesh Patnaik, he was also excited, and he then alluded towards it's not the women cricket team. He said that the Indian women, they are leading from the front in India at many different platforms. Yeah.
Interestingly, you talked about how India has changed ever since you left India 25 years ago, and he explained, looking at his stature, I just wanted to briefly discuss his persona. I liked his calm style, the way he delivered, the way he talked, the calmness and the solid approach in how he approaches. I think that's a very healthy sign for India-Canada relationship.
Yeah. First things first, if you since you mentioned his style, on this point I would mention yes, High Commissioner Patnaik, he was very open to any sorts of questions.
Absolutely.
So, as a journalist, you've been a journalist throughout your life. As a journalist, we want complete freedom, complete editorial independence to ask any questions of our choice. So he was very open, and Canada, India, as you were just mentioning in your opening statements, whatever happened in June 2023, and as you mentioned, then in September 2023, things blew out of proportion, and Canada and India relationship were, on the downhill, and then it's a very sensitive issue to talk about because we have the opinion in the community is also divided. So it was very challenging to talk about these issues, but I won't shy away from these issues, and High Commissioner was ready to discuss that.
One very important thing which he brought up, which you talked about, and he brought up, he said, we don't want any elements from Canada to, disrupt peace in India, and likewise, I would like to see that no elements from India disrupt peace in Canada. I think if you read between the lines, this is very important. He said so much without, in few words. So I think this is the new definition or direction which is going to be between India and Canada, the relationship. Of course, if you have this, the core relationship is healthy, trade would blossom. So I think the trade and the connections, of course, they were curtailed a bit in the last 2 years, but I think relationship is again going to boom. Any important aspect which you picked up from that interview?
Yeah, as you just mentioned, I think the High Commissioner was very clear in his approach because I asked him what is your agenda, and as you just mentioned, I think from India's perspective, because I've been talking to both the sides.
Yep.
I've interviewed former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau before he accused of allegations to India. When former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau came back from the India trip, I was the only journalist, one and only one, because Prime Minister Trudeau, after his India tour, he was very reluctant to give any interview. They didn't give interview to CBC, CTV, or any other mainstream media or any other media. So I was the only journalist right at this table. I discussed at length with former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau how his tour went in India, and I did talk whether Prime Minister Modi brought up the issue of Khalistan, whether Captain Amrinder Singh, because we got this information, Captain Amrinder Singh had handed him a list of 10 individuals, that these are the most wanted from India. I didn't see that list, but I was informed that Hardeep Singh Nijjar's name was also on that list. Yeah. And when I asked our former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, did you get the list? He acknowledged that yes, the list was actually handed.
And that interview made headlines all across. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, you're right, and then I asked him that, what did he do about that? And he said, we gave it to our law enforcement agencies. So Hardeep Nijjar's name was there at that time. This is what I got the information. I haven't seen the list, but at least the list was handed former Prime Minister Trudeau did acknowledge. So I've spoken to him at length. I've had many cabinet ministers also regarding, our current Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand before his India to we met in Oakville. And the last time we saw our Mary Angie, she was the Minister for International Trade. So I spoke, we did interviews, I met her. And now our Minister of International Trade, we know, as we speak, Marinder Sidhu is there as well. So when I talk to the Canadian cabinet ministers or Prime Minister Trudeau, after his allegations as well, he clearly said this. I want to have good relations with India, but rule of law must, I
think if there could be more his political compulsions. I would see it more as domestic political compulsions. 2023 towards the end wasn't the best of times for him. He was being cornered in Parliament, and this is one such issue when you bring up issue which is a nationalist issue which involves everyone. So he wanted to avoid, according to me, the tough questions in the Parliament and cornering of him Parliament, and also this is one such issue that Jagmeet Singh wouldn't have mind supporting Trudeau on this, and he supported Trudeau, and that was the time NDP's support was very crucial for Justin Trudeau. Of course, this was a national issue, but more than that, I thought it was more of a political issue because the issue still stands there. It hasn't been brought to fruition and it hasn't been concluded yet. But the new Prime Minister, the same Liberal Party, the new Prime Minister wants to reset and realizes how important India could be in this, in the new strategic, political and demographic of the world, where it's a Justin Trudeau is no more the Prime Minister of Canada, and now it's Trump era, where diplomacy and political uncertainty is the name of the game, where anything could happen. The readjustments, the realignments are happening in a very dynamic, at a very dynamic pace, and Canada needs to reset relationship with India, and they are also making efforts to have very good relationship with China. They've just started the spade work. I'll also talk about it, but just briefly before we get on to the foreign policy of Canada vis-a-vis India and US, what was Justin Trudeau's compulsion? Because he wanted to pursue it, and he also wanted, because we saw few things which were very rare to see, RCMP giving press conferences and talking about it very openly, which wasn't the name of the game before this.
Yeah, I've discussed this with many cabinet ministers. For the ruling Liberal Party. I've also discussed this with many in Conservative as well. What was the compulsion, as you just asked? What was the need for doing that? Because similar things happened in US as well. Yeah. So when Washington Post got the news that yes, Gurpatwant Singh Pannu is being targeted, so Washington Post called White House. And White House actually then formed Modi, then formed Indian Prime Minister, Indian PMO. This is what the White House did, and they compartmentalized the issue. Not that the US didn't act. They compartmentalized the issue. They said that this is a law enforcement issue. The FBI, the Department of Justice, NYPD, they all were on this issue. They're holding India accountable for alleged targeting of Gurpatwant Singh Pannu. So this is what US did, but they kept on, whether it's the Joe Biden administration. Of course, there are challenges now, but they at least kept on the trade going, the discussions going on. So they compartmentalized both these issues separately. Canada, I think we did a mistake. We basically, yes, of course, when Globe and Mail called, and I was reading an article today as well from same reporters, Robert Five and Stephen Chase. So when Globe and Mail called that we have information, so our Prime Minister went on the floor on September 18th in 2023, and they announced this thing on the floor of the Parliament. So now this escalated into a full-blown crisis. And I had Minister Ruby Sota here recently. I said, now what is the change? Yeah. This is what I was talking all along. Yeah. I mean, you should have come. Now this is what you're saying. And at the G7 summit, Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand, she was asked the same question. And just for our viewers' benefit, I'd like to tell you that Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand, before joining politics in 2019, she's a law graduate. Actually, she's done post-graduation in law as well. She was teaching law, so she clearly knows. So when she was asked again this thing about the Hardeep Nijjar issue, she clearly said they cannot blur the lines. She clearly said that as a cabinet minister, we shouldn't be involved in administering, the judicial process or hunting down anybody or doing anything or giving decisions. It's the law enforcement agencies who are doing their job. She, as a cabinet minister, as a foreign minister, yes, she can talk at the diplomatic level about security concerns of Canada and discuss with India, but the judicial process, they cannot interfere, they cannot do anything on those sides. The judicial process has to be independent of any cabinet minister.
Absolutely. And when a country like India is involved, obviously there are diplomatic channels. These are the things that should be handled in camera and not on camera. And I think Justin Trudeau had more of political compulsions than anything else. He thought that he would consolidate a certain vote bank in Canada, which is very crucial for him. And also, he never wanted to lose the support from NDP, the champion of NDP. He was at that time was Jagmeet Singh, and those are that's all behind us. But now, what's staring deep in our face is Trump era. Trump era is all marked by uncertainty, vis-a-vis economic uncertainty, vis-a-vis tariff uncertainty, and more so diplomatic uncertainty. Today's friend in a week's time could be your foe, and that's what Trump is telling us, is dictating us. And nobody knows who's friend, and that is a big problem. And somebody who doesn't have a very healthy relationship with US are trying to huddle together. And is that correct, that India and Canada are perhaps trying to reset relationship thanks to Donald Trump?
Of course, that is the factor as well. Maybe India and Canada, they've started resetting the relationship a bit earlier because of Donald Trump, because of his tariffs. But this would have happened even if, India and Canada won't be facing the...
That accelerated the relationships resetting.
Absolutely. I think it happened sooner than later because of Trump. That's a given fact. But I'm sure though both are natural democracies, both are going, natural allies. And you're right, as you mentioned earlier as well, the domestic politics, and I don't know who was advising our former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, to take the fight till this level. Of course, you need to hold India accountable, but that's what diplomacy is all about.
Absolutely.
That's why we call it the diplomatic efforts.
Channels,
it has to be behind closed doors, not openly in the public. So, things were blown way out of, and where are we now? I mean, India is clearly saying this. Has India committed to anything? When you ask, I asked the diplomat, if you asked the Indian High Commissioner Dinesh Patnaik or anybody from India for that matter, they will say, do you think any country will admit that? No country will first of all admit that, number one. Secondly, when you're asking assurances for the future, they'll tell that we haven't done it in the past, so why bother giving any assurances? So I think this should have been handled diplomatically and let the law take its own course. And the judicial process should not have been, highlighted that much. Let it do its own course. And the NSAs are meeting, that's fine. RCMP Commissioner and NIA Chief, they should be meeting. The Foreign Affairs Minister should meet. And the Prime Minister, whoever is there, they could keep pressing Prime Minister Modi. We need some accountability.
So nothing has changed on the ground, but what's changed is the perception and the leadership. That's the only thing which has changed. Far more deeper consequences. Now, let's bring in China. China is one such player that you cannot avoid for long, and China has become very important for India and Canada as well. For India, for different reasons, because China is a newfound friend of Russia, and Russia, obviously, if US is not your friend, you need, these are not the Cold War era times, but again, somewhere down the line, you have to pick your friends. If US is not on your side, then you need to have Russia if you're in the Southeast Asian bloc. So India clearly is now getting cozy with Russia, and Russia's only precondition is that we are cozy with China, so you need to be cozy with China. But China, again, India's past experience, they cannot trust China. But for the moment, they have to have some sort of a healthy relationship or try and see that China becomes friend. But the caveat there is China is nobody's friend. Did you talk about China?
Yeah,
Off camera?
Since you're mentioning China, I've mentioned this always on radio and TV. The biggest rivalry of this century, which I think is going to be between US and China. Things could change maybe 50 years from now, but at least, I did talk with the High Commissioner, Mr. Dinesh Patnaik as well, and he clearly mentioned this. He clearly mentioned this, that as US is the world's largest economy, touching $30 trillion, China heading towards $20 trillion. So these are the two largest economy. And I asked him, where does India see India itself as the global stage? I personally think US and China, this is the rivalry of the century. For India, it'll be very challenging. India will be very challenging from the security perspective. Why I'm saying from the security perspective? Because India has a neighborhood which presents lots of challenges, to name like Pakistan. So there could be an establishment, they could be creating troubles for their own reasons for India. And at that point of time, if there is an escalation like we saw of the Operation Sindoor, if there is a direct conflict between India and Pakistan, now where does China stand? We've seen in the past, China would not hesitate.
Anybody's guess.
Yeah, and now with China, you have Turkey. Azerbaijan may or may not count that much, but then with China, Turkey is a very strong player. You cannot ignore Turkey.
Of course not, yeah.
Of course not. And I mean, China and Turkey backing Pakistan. And imagine if US, not overtly, but covertly, gives some sort of support to...
There's a good chance with now Asif Munir getting cozy with Donald Trump. 4 meetings in the last 4 months.
He's his favorite general now.
One of the favorite generals and one of the most favored countries, as the body language and the meetings would have it. I don't know how many generals got a chance to meet US president, but
I haven't seen any.
He's the only one who's got so cozy and had many, if not 4 meetings, at least 4 lunches or dinners with Donald Trump. So they've become best buddies. So that's not a very healthy sign. And as you talked the other day, Pakistan have amended the constitution to give superpowers, some sort of superpower to General Asif Munir. He's already a field marshal, and then now he's above the political dispensation. So not a very healthy scene out there. So they're acknowledging that he's very good friends with Donald Trump. So that's besides the point. Where does Canada fit into this? Canada is a very small player as far as India is concerned. But why Canada is important for India?
See, I'll first of all quote what High Commissioner Mr. Patnaik, what he mentioned. He says, India, and I heard it for the first time, I never knew this. He says Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has a very soft corner for Canada.
Wow.
Why? Because Canada was one of those few countries, when he was the Chief Minister of Punjab, Chief Minister of Gujarat, when Modi was the Chief Minister of Gujarat, so Canada had built good relationship. But one thing I knew before, this is what Jason Kenney would tell at that time, that the Americans would learn from Canadians how we can build good relationship with Gujarat. So I've heard it before from the Canadian side as well, I'm also quoting from Jason Kenney as well, that the Americans would learn from Canadians how to build good relationship in Gujarat with the former Chief Minister of Gujarat, Modi, and now the current Prime Minister. So that means Canadians were very good at building relations with Modi, and this is the first time I've heard from the Indian side, the High Commissioner clearly mentioned, Modi has a soft corner for Canada. And I think Canada is a G7 country, and imagine if this time, because Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been to most of the G7 summits. India is not part of the G7 countries, but
G20 they're part of.
India is a part of G20, but not part of G7. And India has been invited. Prime Minister Modi likes to go everywhere. So now imagine if Canada would not have invited India this time.
Catastrophe.
Yeah. So now Canada did invite. So for India, Canada is definitely an important player. And Canada is a global player. Canada is part of G7, Canada is part of G20, Canada attends APEC summit, Canada goes to Asia summit, Canada is a very important player at the United Nations. So Canada is still a very important
Foreign
player.
remittances. Canada is one of the biggest source of foreign remittances for India. The newfound rare minerals, Canada says that they'll file all engines to exploit and dig out as soon as possible all their rare minerals. And India also may not, India may be keeping quiet at the moment, but India also sees that perhaps a little share maybe they can also get out of that rare mineral. So it's always healthy to have some sort of a good relationship with Canada. Canada has been neutral and liberal as far as India is concerned. It's just in the matter of last couple of years that the relationship were at slowest ebb, thanks to Justin Trudeau and some hard posturing from Indian side, and also the Indian media. I think I would not be doing justice if I wouldn't be talking about the rhetoric which Indian media of late has been creating. That's also one of the biggest problems. So they hold you guilty even before the trial. So that's what Indian media is today all about. So I hope and my best wishes to Indian media, they get better, they get well soon, and that's the only thing I can do. Media of a country plays very important role if they have to promote or hijack agenda, and thanks to Indian media, they did their best to hijack and get the relations to the point where it was in 23 and 24. So I think now things would change. Again, getting back to US, good relationship between India and Canada. Does it affect US, or they don't even count Canada or India in that part of schemes?
No, US won't be very much concerned if Canada and India start building a good relationship. US could be concerned from the Canadian perspective if Canada or India start building good relationship with China. Canada has started doing that, but Canada is going to be cautious. Why? Because the head of CSIS, in one of his first public speeches that I've heard, I don't think so, I can't recall Canada's head of CSIS giving a speech publicly. He has mentioned just recently in his public speech Russia, China. Of course, there's discussion about Iran as well, and there has been mention of India as well and Pakistan as well, but mainly Russia, China. So the CSIS director has clearly mentioned that yes, they have spies over here, and so many other things they mentioned especially regarding Russia and China. So US would be concerned if Canada is building good relations with China. They are having their own deal, that is fine. And from India's perspective, US will definitely be concerned, because if US, as I mentioned, the biggest rivalry of this century is US and China. So first things first, US doesn't want China or India to get closer to Russia, number one. But secondly, US doesn't want all three of them, as we saw that picture from the SEO summit. US definitely doesn't want Russia, China, India on the same page or any sort of alliance. That's why BRICS matters a lot to US.
That's a very important aspect, which of course we'll talk about some other day. But right now, I think the world is changing. The diplomacy, the realignments are happening at a very fast pace, faster than the earth revolves around the sun. So that's how, thanks to Donald Trump, and that's how the diplomacy is shifting and transitioning so quickly. There's a silver lining out here. Silver lining is that some of the countries which were not seeing eye to eye now perhaps are trying to forge a good, healthy relationship. If I talk about Canada and China, one such contentious issue is EVs. China is producing mass EVs, and perhaps they say if the world doesn't have restrictions, they'll capture the world. And one such sticky point between the relationship between China and US is the EVs. But I think they're exerting pressure on Canada as well to not have 100% tariff on EV vehicles which are produced in China. And believe me, the videos I've been seeing, those cars are fantabulous cars, dirt cheap, not even 50% of what you pay for EV cars in Canada. That's going to be a big contentious issue. Do you think, if at all we have to reset our relationship with China, we have to have some sort of a leverage or perhaps tell them that our market is very small market, but you can come and explore our market?
I'll start from this point that our current Prime Minister Mark Carney, before the federal budget, when he, in his address to the nation, among so many other things, he mentioned this thing very clearly that we have to double the non-US export in the next 10 years. So trying to double that, he also mentioned a very important point that we are going to engage with Asian giants. And when he mentioned the word Asian giants, he mentioned India first.
Yeah.
Though China is the second largest economy, India is heading towards being a third largest economy, but it's still not second or first. So he mentioned India first and then he mentioned China. And even if you look at the activity that's happening with India, our Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand, he had a bilateral tour, not a G20, or there wasn't any summit at all going. She went to India. Of course, she went to China as well. But then we have our International Trade Minister. We're showing his pictures as well. So our International Trade Minister, Maninder Sidhu, he follows up. Yep. So Maninder Sidhu, he goes to India. He meets with Hardeep Puri. Then he meets the Petroleum Minister. Then he meets Piyush Goyal. He's met so many other leaders over there. So, right, and you see this picture as well. This is the delegation there, So Canada and India, the speed at which the relationships are being strengthened, Canada and China, there will be challenges from many aspects. Number one, the US aspect. We've seen this story played out before as well. When we were sandwiched between US and China, we did detain one of the telecom executives, Meng Wanzhou, and at that time, two of our Michaels were detained. Not detained, actually. They were in prison at that time, and Canada suffered a lot. And our two businessmen, eventually they were released, but there was a lot of tensions between China and Canada.
Still, I think a couple of them, they're still in detention in.
Yeah, there are others, but of course at that time the reason was pretty clear, because we detained Hawaii executive Meng Wanzhou, and these two Michaels, they were businessmen, they were detained. China was alleging that for espionage, but I don't think so. That was the reason. We all know, for obvious reasons, they detained them. Tit for tat. And it's not just the EVs. It's not just the EVs. There are so many other issues. I mean, whether it's the canola, there are other things as well. So Canada and China, there are issues. And also there will be another issue. As much as with India, the challenges regarding there's only one challenge. The sticky point between India and Canada is the Khalistan issue. Right, that is there. We'll talk about that if you want to. We'll talk. But between China and Canada, our Canadian Parliament has passed that yes, on Muslim Uyghurs, China is committing genocide. And if you talk to the Conservative Party members, it was the Conservatives who brought in this motion. So I think whether it's the Conservatives, whether it's the NDP or Liberals, they will be very cautious how they deal with China. But if you ask my opinion...
Very important point. I think you brought up a very important point.
Sure.
These are the very hard economic times. Can Canada be champions of human rights where they'll talk about atrocities in China or elsewhere, or they should keep quiet for the moment and think about consolidating economic relationships and diplomacy. So which wins? I think this would be a very sensitive line to toe, because Canada's history is all about human right protections and refugee protection. But is this the moment that they should, for at least for a few years, give up this issue of human champions of being human rights?
That's a great question, and I know, and I think that's being discussed at length, and that is an actual debate which is happening across Canada and many other countries as well. I don't think so the pendulum has to swing on either side. I think we need to do the balancing act, and the balancing act can be done. Of course, it's challenging, as much as we should weigh in on the human rights issue, whether it's China, India, or any other country. We can diplomatically weigh in on the human rights issue, but the trade, because if you have to talk, I've said this many times, today's foreign policy, if you had to dictate in one word, it's all about expansion.
Absolutely.
Expansion. And expansion, after expansion, the second keyword would be, of course, Donald Trump likes tariffs, but I would say after expansion, the second keyword would be trade. So if you're looking for expansion, if you're looking for trade, and if you combine these words, trade, expansion, so you cannot overtly start dictating others about human rights. Yes, during behind the closed doors, talk about human rights issues. We cannot really leave that. But there's another aspect to this. What is that? If someone starts lecturing us,
Yeah.
okay, let me pick on Canada and US first. If someone starts lecturing on us the way Canadians have treated indigenous,
Yeah.
the indigenous people of Canada, the way Canada has treated the residential school.
Look at your own backyard.
Look at your own backyard. It's full of graves. There's so many skeletons in Canada's own backyard. Number one. Second, from Kamagata Maru, we've asked apologies to the South Asian community. We've asked apologies to the Chinese community. And then, okay, third point. Where is the justice for the biggest terrorist attack in Canadian history, 1985 Air India bombing? You have not delivered justice. So,
Absolutely.
So the list goes on for Canada.
Hypocrisy and human rights can't go side by side.
Yeah.
Somewhere down the line, you stand exposed, and I think those are the tough questions that are being asked. I want you to switch gears and be a political pundit for a few minutes. Carney, how would you rate his performance if scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the best and 0 being the lowest? So how would you rate? I know it's a bit off question, but I need to bring some context to it.
Sure, I think I'll rate it at 5.
Right.
So why 5? Because first things first. And that's $1 million question. Can he really deliver beyond his credentials? His credentials are great. Yeah. I've always said that. We all know that, whether his education qualifications, his experience, in the private sector, his experience as the governor of Bank of Canada, his experience as the Bank of England. He was the governor there as well. But now, 3 questions for him. First things first. Can he really deliver? I mean, $78 billion deficit, and there is no plan, to bring the budget in surplus, let alone the debt we're going to accumulate over the years. So, and we're talking about generational investments, we're talking about building infrastructure, but you know what? I've heard this story during the federal elections in 2015. We got impressed, $10 billion deficits. But now here we are. The second important point is, does Mark Carney have a competent team? He cannot do it all by himself. How many competent people Mark Carney has in his cabinet? That's the $1 million question. And I can clearly say this. I have no hesitation.
You've been very candid there.
Yeah, there have been quota systems. If you want, I don't want to name anybody because I don't want to be rude, but I'm already hinting at that. There have been quota systems. I mean, is every single cabinet minister in Mark Carney's cabinet really competent enough? I mean, you have Minister...
You're spot on.
Yeah. Third very important point. Yeah. The budget that we've seen, when was the last time Mark Carney, really had to worry about paying a mortgage? Yeah. Here are Canadians who, let alone mortgage, they are living on rent. They have to make a choice whether paying the rent or the utility bill or bringing food for their children, not for themselves.
Absolutely.
So if Canadians are in this tough situation, Mark Carney, does he really feel the pain of a common Canadian? I mean, he's nothing wrong with being an elite, but then these are the questions Mark Carney, let's see if he can answer that. But I give it to him that on certain areas, especially like India, Canada, he's made a bold move.
I think
Please.
People say he's got a very great acumen as an economist, but I think he was born politician. He was always in the wrong line, and way he talks, way he delivers, and way he gracefully tackles those difficult questions. He was born politician. Today he says that Canada would see $5 trillion of investments in next 5 years. I hope what he's saying is makes some sense, but I really don't know how this $5 trillion and who's going to invest $5 trillion in digging up hard earth and pulling out those rare minerals. If we couldn't have done it in last so many years, why would anybody else do that? That's a $1 million question, not a $5 trillion question. But I think we'll have to do justice to some of our viewers. Now Channel Y is watched extensively in US as well. So this is the time I would like him to talk about a bit US politics. And he talked about Canadian cabinet, and I also want to talk about US's cabinet, where if you would get a chance to look at the cabinet briefing, it's all on TV now. No in-camera meetings, everything is on TV, everything is in live, where if a cabinet minister or a secretary talks for 5 minutes, 3 minutes is all about Donald Trump, and 1 minute is a little bit sense, and 1 minute is I really don't know what he talks about. So looking at the cabinet or the secretaries in US, I really don't know what quality, where are the quality politicians gone these days? Why are they hiding, and where are they hiding? So I would like him to talk about a bit US politics, and now onwards we'll be talking regularly about the problems and the issues in US. We have to be fair to you, and a large number of viewers, and there are large number of feedbacks and requests that we are getting from US as well. So we'll have some sort of a programming on US as well. But Donald Trump, again, you'll have to be a political pundit. 0 to 10 for Donald Trump for US, not for Canada's, not from Canadian perspective.
I would give it a 4 out of 10. Yeah. Why out of 4, 10 for US President Donald Trump? Because let's talk with tariffs. That's his favorite.
Sorry to interrupt. Even 4, please. I thought you were very generous.
I was generous. Okay. Okay. And this time I'll throw back the question at you as well. So you said 4 was generous, but I'll highlight my points, but I want to also listen to your thought on that as well, and we'll discuss that. 4, if you look at the positive first, let's start from there. If you look at the positives, the Democrats, with due respect, I'm saying Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, they were not really coming up with clear ideas or policies. I've
Absolutely.
heard Kamala Harris as well, then Joe. I think the Democrats have to get their act together. One win, of course, we saw some few wins, whether it was the races for the governor or the mayoral races as well. Mamdani, he alone cannot really lift that, 34-year-old TikToker.
He brought glamour to politics, which was missing for a long time, longest time, ever since Obama. He was a very good orator. So US people, somewhere down the line, they like glamour. They want somebody who's articulate, if not articulate enough, at least he phrases his answers very well, a good oratory style. So he was spot on. Maybe he may not be able to deliver, or who knows, he would deliver, but he had that good oratory skills. So, and the glamour and the way he dresses, a young politician with all high hopes and showing you the dream. So that's what that was all about him.
Yeah, Mamdani, you're right. I mean, he's very charismatic. He's young, and he really campaigned on affordability in New York. And you know what happens, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, New York, we're talking New York. Affordability is the #1 issue.
Absolutely.
So what happens is, if anybody comes up and says, you know what, you can promise anything. You haven't been the mayor of New York, so you could promise anything. So he's young, charismatic, and he's not apologetic about anything. Oh, I'm Muslim, and here are a few people from India or Hindu background. Oh, I'm the son of Meera Nair, and then I'm a son of Mahmood. Yep. I'm a son of an immigrant, yep. And he talks about affordability. Yep. So there were so many good things. But anyways, what we're talking to your earlier point, for Trump. Tariffs, I think it will be a zero-sum game. Why? You could gain certain things. There could be billions, not trillions of dollars. I'm sure about that. There won't be trillions of dollars. There would be billions of dollars, maybe $1 trillion or $2 trillion in total after a 2-year third term. But the most important thing is, in the new global order, you tell me, will India, will Canada? I mean, 2 of our prime ministers have clearly said that era that we had, that relationship with the US is over. The European Union, most of them are talking about Plan B. So is Japan. So is South
Absolutely.
Korea. So is Australia. Yeah. India. I mean, the 35 years of work. I still remember Madeleine Albright and Vajpayee, the hug, or Jappi. I mean, it's all gone. Yeah. Dr. Manmohan Singh, the way he, he took the charge, defined the West. Obama. His equation with Obama, his equation with Bush. Yeah. The nuclear deal.
Absolutely.
So the government could have fallen down, but he defied Mrs. Sonia Gandhi, he defied the West. He said, no, the government could fall. Here it is. And then his equation with Obama.
Yeah.
Then Modi and Obama. Then Modi and Trump. And all that is over. It's over. India are today, they're openly saying this. So the trust factor,
Trust deficit with
trust
US.
deficit right now with different countries, that's the biggest loss. And the other part is, you were promising, affordability. Look at the inflation numbers. The one positive that I see is the markets are off. But 80% of the investment that is being done in US, it's on AI, artificial intelligence.
Absolutely.
And I'm not an expert on markets, but whatever Financial Post or BNN or whatever I read, I think it's a clear indication in the next 2 months, 6 months, maybe 12 months, 18 months.
Could be a crash.
The bubble could burst. We saw the dot-com bubble as well. So I'm not saying it is going to happen, and don't count me on that. But yeah. But I give it to them. The other part, the one last thing that I wanted to discuss is, and it's not just the affordability issue. If you ask, today, are the investors? I mean, of course, there are people who would say, yeah, let's make America great again. Let's start our. But are you really focusing on manufacturing? Focus. The technology is the forefront where the next war is going to be fought.
True.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I think if I have to give my 2 cents on this.
What do you say?
Tariff, to begin with, let's do it in a very simplistic way. Who's going to pay the tariff? It's the American people. It's the consumer in America who's going to pay the tariff. So obviously, they're collecting the tariff, and then the government would have it and distribute it in whatever way they want it. And now let's come to make in. The basis is all about why would there be tariff? Because they want everything to be made in US. US style of manufacturing is very different. They do it in large scales. Let's talk about steel or aluminium. If they have to manufacture steel or aluminium, they would do in millions of tons. Millions of tons would need a big factory, maybe a $1 billion investment to set up a big factory. Big factory to set up $1 billion factory would take at least 10 to 20,000 workers. And it's not just one aluminium or steel. If they do it everywhere, where would they get the workers? Cheap worker is not available in US now, because they had a mix of illegal immigrants who would work on cash, cheap, and then wage inflation. If wage inflation goes up, average worker who would cost in Canada with all your EIs and unions and everything would cost around $30 to $40 per hour. Same worker in US with now wage inflation, still now, even without, if you don't even count in wage inflation, would cost around $60 to $70 per hour. So it's not very easy to first construct an infrastructure where you produce everything in US. And then if you produce everything in US, it's going to take at least a couple of years before you have that infrastructure. And once you start making everything in US, and tomorrow a new government comes in or somebody else replaces Trump, and they decide that Canada is a very important player, and Canada has Arctic, Canada has Northern excess, and we need to be very friendly with Canada. We'll cut that tariff from 25% to 10%, or maybe in some cases make it trade-free zone as it was a few years ago. In that situation, what's going to happen to billions of dollars of investment made in that industry? Businessman is very skeptical. They know regimes change faster, and their mindset, who's talking? It's Donald Trump, who talks ill about Ukrainian president today, and next week he becomes his best friend. So who's talking? So somebody who's not very credible, on the world scenario, somebody who's not very credible, he puts 20% tariff and has a bad dream and says that, no, the tariff would go up to 50% on one country. He thinks that the biggest consumer in the world is US. It may be a big consumer, but let's also understand that US is also a producer of services, be it Netflix, be it your Intuit, which is the largest accounting firm, be it Boeing's, be it your fighter planes. any services you talk about, be it Apple, Android, or Microsoft, countries will be looking for options. They'll understand that US is no more a reliable trading partner. If you'll put tariffs, we'll look for other options, and that's beginning to happen. If you'll have your factories set up for made in US in next 2 years and manufacture everything in US, the world is not sitting idle. They'll also looking at different options. They won't let their economies go down. And this dictatorship sort of style that we are the biggest and the strongest, I think US would have a taste of this sooner. I think if I would to give him, rate him on a scale of 0 to 10, I think it's not even 1. So what he's doing for US is really is taking up his own grave. Not his own grave, but US economy's grave, and trust deficit is the real big issue. Today, Canada trusts US? I really don't think. Today, India trusts US? I really don't think. So trust deficit is much more than 50% or 25% tariff, which India has put a trust tariff deficit on him, which is bigger than the tariff. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I would say that was a brilliant take. The only things, I have given passing marks to Trump 4 out of 10, and you've given him 1.
Yeah.
So he's trailing.
I too was generous. I too was generous there.
You were still generous there, but still he's trailing far behind in your report card for Trump. So yeah, we'll carry on as you just mentioned earlier as well. We will talk a lot more about the US and Ymedia US report. So that'll be the segment, Ymedia US report. We'll talk a lot about US because now Channel Y is being broadcasted right across US on Dish Network, on Sling. So you can, whether you're in New York, LA, California, wherever you are, Chicago, North Carolina, South Carolina, wherever, you can watch Channel Y USA on Dish Network on Sling in US.
And we would like to hear more from you, our audience and viewers in US. Any feedback, anything that you want us to cover, or any issue that you want us to highlight. Don't think that we are in Canada. We are Canada based. We are everywhere now. We'll be making all efforts to bring out news from US as well. US is very important for us, and your viewership is very important for us. So we would like constant feedback on our programmings, or anything, be it a local issue. If you're viewing it from California or New York, really doesn't matter. We'll have someone reported from there, and your participation is the biggest. And I know he's got a keen interest in US. Now I would like him to rate, if you were to live in US today, which state or city you would like to live in, and why?
I'll pick 2 and then I'll pick 1 if I'm allowed to do that. I think LA or New York, these would be my best bets if I had to live in US for obvious reasons. LA.
You like Hollywood.
Yeah, I love Hollywood, and LA is one place where you can do business and entertain yourself. California, it has a good weather as well. And being in the Bay Area, then you're close to the tech sector as well. There are a lot of studios there and regarding business ideas. So I think that is one area, LA, I would love to live. New York, with its close proximity to Toronto, and it's a financial capital as well. And also there is lots happening in New York as well. And both these cities, whether it's LA or New York or New Jersey, both these cities have a huge South Asian population as well. So I think these are the 2 cities where I'd like to live. If I had to pick one of the 2, I think then it'll be LA.
LA. So all the viewers who are watching.
And what about you? What about you?
I'll visit him wherever he lives. I'll just visit him.
What about you? If you had to go and live,
that's what I'm. Look for a good property in LA, and for him something decent, good, and high end. So whenever he goes there, I'll visit him. So that's my take on it. That's all we have time for this on this special edition in Channel Y. We'll continue with our coverage. Now it's about Bihar elections and the local Canadian news, but keep watching Channel Y, and as I always say, don't let your politicians sleep. If you really want to sleep well, ask them the tough questions, the hard questions. If you really can't do that, let us know. We'll do that for you, and that's the only thing that we can do. We are not going through we're going through very difficult times, economic times, and you have to ask those difficult questions because that's the only thing you need to do, and perhaps that's the only thing that you can do. And as always, to not drink and drive. It's festive season, never drink and drive. That's all we have time for tonight, but our programming would continue. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. Before we head for a break, I must compliment once again, always a player sharing this platform with you, and at Ymedia, player honor. Thank you so much, Vikramji. Player, thank you.